Well, thank you, everyone. I am so thrilled to have everyone here with us tonight. Thank you so much for joining us for this incredibly important event where we're going to be discussing homelessness. So very much want to welcome you. And we're discussing this in the context of our mission, which is to stimulate ideas, broaden debate, and to catalyze action. And, you know, I've been reflecting on this particular event and reflecting on how we've been in lockdown. We've had 2 lockdowns. Around the world, we are actually having to be at home and sit in our homes. And many of us are very blessed to have homes to be in, whether we're shielding or in lockdown. But there are those of us who have no homes. And on top of that, they have issues that are compounded by significant illnesses. So tonight we're going to have quite an esteemed panel to discuss this, where we're engaging in partnership with the incredible St. Mary's Hospice to discuss this very issue. So those of you who don't know me, my name is Deirdre Labassiere, and I am absolutely thrilled and delighted to welcome you in my capacity as the current chair of the Lunar Society. On the call tonight, we have also the vice chair of the Lunar Society, Peter Borg Bartolo. So I thought we would just start with a few house rules before we start. So you will see that there's a little red icon at the top that shows that the event is being recorded. So if you want to be anonymous, please just turn off your camera and your beautiful faces won't show. You're welcome to use the mute buttons throughout the meeting, other than when you are speaking. I think the 3 words that I've heard the most in this season is "you're on mute" when somebody's trying to speak. So please do unmute when you're going to speak. The mute button can be found on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. If you wish to make a point or to ask a question, you can signal to myself or to Sharon Thompson, Councillor Sharon Thompson, whom I'll be introducing shortly, that you want to speak by using the reactions button, or you can send a thumbs up. You're also welcome to show your agreement with what a speaker is saying by using the hand clapping facility. You can also use the instant messaging chat feature, which is brilliant for asking the chair questions or to comment whilst another person is speaking. So that's a fantastic feature to use if you want to utilize that. And of course, we found that lots of people like to continue the conversation offline. So you can find us at Lunar Soc if you're going to use Twitter. If you're going to be using social media, hashtag Lunar Society. And of course, you can find us on LinkedIn under the Lunar Society. Right, so now that we've had all of those bits out of the way, the boring bits, tonight, it's really just such an incredible honor to welcome Birmingham St. Mary's Hospice to join us to discuss these health and welfare issues that face the homeless. And of course, we're going into Christmas, and we're going to be even more so together at home. But homelessness, as you know, is just not just about Christmas. It's about something that faces people throughout the year. Now, the hospice has actually recently launched a new service to help to ensure that those who are homeless in the city of Birmingham receive really high quality palliative and end of life care and bereavement support, and that it's tailored to their needs. So we're going to be discussing that particularly in the face of so many challenges, of which frankly the pandemic is just one of those. So we have an incredible panel tonight who is going to be chaired by the exemplary, most wonderful Councillor Sharon Thompson, Justice of the Peace. She is the Birmingham City Council Cabinet Member for Homes and Neighbourhoods. I've had the pleasure of knowing Sharon for a while. I get to call her Sharon rather than Councillor Sharon Thompson. And it's just an incredible honor to know such a prolific woman who walks the talk. And in the context of her, of what she does in the work that she does with homes and neighborhoods, Sharon certainly walks the talk because she has been there herself. And she'll be speaking a bit more about that as well. Councillor Thompson also serves on the West Midlands Combined Authority Housing and Land Delivery Board, and she's such a great ambassador for the council and for Birmingham. Tonight we also have Sharon Hudson, whom I spoke with earlier today, and I said to her, you know, I was completely fangirling her because honestly, this woman, in terms of her background and her career working in HIV and AIDS care, she has done so much for the city, particularly in relation to her background as a registered general nurse in health research. And she's the one who is responsible for this new service that I mentioned earlier. So working collaboratively with the third sector, she's going to be talking a bit more about how the team is growing. Then we also have Christine Grover, who is the Learning and Evaluation Coordinator at Birmingham Changing Futures Together. And we'll be hearing also from Lee Demetrio, the Development Officer and a former peer mentor. Working with the LWPM continuation strategy. And lastly, we'll be hearing from Helen Rawnsley, who is a prolific partnerships manager at St. Mary's Hospice. And we have an event at the end from the choir with no name. So it's actually my complete pleasure now to just hand over to Councillor Sharon Thompson to take over proceedings for the evening.
Thank you very much for those warm introductions, Deirdre, much appreciated. And thank you to everyone that's logged on this evening to have this discussion about a very important topic in the city and across the country, and actually looking at homelessness from a very different perspective to how people traditionally just talk about homelessness in its entirety. I think that it's very important that we talk about palliative care and end of life, because those that have been around homelessness know that homeless people are more likely to, well, your life expectancy is about 30 years less than anybody else who lives within a home, which is a huge number. And for those that sort of have done outreach or work with people in temporary accommodation and places like that, I was very heartened actually a couple of years ago when a rough sleeper that I knew particularly well, very well indeed, he passed away. And I actually felt that very strongly because it was someone that I'd seen around a lot, who I was used to speaking to, who I'd engaged with a lot. I knew about his life, despite the fact he wasn't around many of his family or friends. But what struck me the most was not only did it affect those that worked with the homeless community, and they are a community, it was the grief and the effects that it had within the homeless community. Where were they supposed to go if they wanted to talk or release their feelings about their loss? It was someone that was a very close friend, if not like family. It was the effect it was having within the homeless community. And actually those that were particularly unwell, and you could see that they were declining in their health, it was about how do we find them a service that they can go to get that support and care, but a service that they actually trusted. Because the very difficulty is when you are homeless, a lot of the time, places that those that are not homeless would go to, services you would engage with, you might not have that trust factor because actually you've fallen out with services, and you know, life circumstances means that there's places that you won't go and you won't trust. So I think it was very, very important. And the feedback that we had was such that we really did need to make sure that we looked at this, because many a times when it comes to homelessness, we consider mental health, we consider drug and alcohol abuse, we consider isolation and loneliness, physical health, a house, when it's not all about bricks and mortar, But again, we don't think about the emotional side around palliative care and also those that have passed away. And then I think I'm just going to talk a little bit, as Deirdre said, I came from a background where I was a homeless teenager in this city. So I was homeless in Birmingham. I was quite fortunate that I went to somewhere that was called The Link. I was 16 years of age, and they put me in touch with a wonderful charity, which is one of my favourite charities, which is St Basil's. And St Basil's, I always say this, St Basil's did not support me. St Basil's invested in me and believed in me and gave me that hope that enabled me to get myself on the front foot, to get to actually the person that I am today. And that's why I'm so affected and wanting to support other people that go through homelessness. But enough about me. Birmingham has huge challenges when it comes to homelessness, as we sat in a national housing crisis and a national homelessness crisis. And for those that are a bit geekish about this and know the statistics like I do, I can say that since 2010 up until roughly around 2017, rough sleeping had increased by 167%. And across this country at the moment, there's more than 200,000 children without a permanent home. And that is really distressing on many fronts. The pandemic has been particularly challenging for Birmingham, as it has across the country. But with those challenges, it's brought a lot of opportunities for us to work better collectively. And we have supported over 1,000 single people since March, those that were rough sleeping, those that were at risk of homelessness, and those, because a lot of people were falling out with their families and all kinds of stuff at home, and it's made a huge difference. We've got a domestic abuse hub that specialises in helping people who are fleeing their home situation and they need specialist support in that area. And that's run by commissioned services through Women's Aid, because they're specialists in that area and the council cannot do it all, are not expertised at it all. We have the Young Persons Hub, which is also supported by St Basil's. We now have an ex-offenders hub, and we also have housing options, so that we have specialist areas across the city that can give that real wraparound support. But most importantly of all, we have huge levels of partnerships and collaborations across the city. We meet regularly to talk about homelessness as a city. We have a prevention plan that as a city we all adopt. And around that table are people like St Basil's, but also people like St Mary's Hospice as well, because we value the work that they do. And it's really important when it comes to improving the lives of our homeless communities. Our ambition is to prevent people from becoming homeless in the first place, but where we are not in that space to do that with them yet, our ambition is to support them at whatever phase of life they are in. And this again is where palliative care comes into it for those that have had significant health challenges and are at the end of life. So I'm going to stop there to try and make sure that we keep a little bit on time. And I want to really invite everybody to make sure that we're engaging tonight, ask your questions in the chat. We want this to be a real conversation between everyone. And I want to now hand over to someone who I hugely respect, and I know a lot of people respect across this sector because of her sheer dedication when it comes to palliative care, but also wanting to break into new areas to make sure people who wouldn't normally access a service have that opportunity. And that's exactly what's happened with our homeless community. So I'm going to hand over now to Sharon Hudson.
Thank you so much, Sharon. David, if you could have the slides, that would be great. How do you follow that? Just incredible. So I'm Sharon Hudson. I'm the Community Development and Partnerships Lead here at St Mary's Hospice. And I'm going to talk to you about our new hospice homelessness support service. But before I start, I just want to let you know that the people that actually do the real work are also on the call. So Hannah Warwick and Ellie Winters are our specialist social worker and nurse that are actually delivering the project. So we'll be around for questions afterwards as well. Okay, next slide, please, David. So for those of you that don't know, we are one of 4 hospices across our city. And this programme is across the whole city and involves working in partnership with every hospice. So this isn't just for those that would be involved with Birmingham St Mary's Hospice. So there's lots of partnership that's been involved in the development and the design and the delivery of this. But one of the key things has been that we're working in partnership with all of our hospices. For those of you know, for us, it's very mixed, but we're a charitable organisation. 33% approximately currently of our funding comes from the NHS, and the rest is charitable. And the homelessness programme, which has been funded for 2 years, has actually been funded by particular charitable donations. And I just want to particularly mention the Eastern Trust, who have been very generous in supporting this work for us. This is a service for people, and this is important. So we talk about palliative and end-of-life care, but actually when we talk about palliative and end-of-life care, those words, that language that we use isn't seen as relevant for people either that are working in the sector or people that are homeless and might be living with advanced ill health. So we talk about this programme as a programme for advanced ill health, and actually using that language has really helped others to understand what it is that we're trying to do. And I've just put up there just so that you've got that available to you. When we, through COVID, we've had to change a lot of the way that we're working. And one of the things that we introduced in March was a single point of access to all of our hospice services. So that number is there if you've got access to the slides afterwards. So if you need to, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you need to access our hospice services, then you can via that number. Next slide. Okay, so why do we need this? We've got hospices, they're there, they're delivering a service. Why do we need something special? So, as Sharon mentioned, the average age of death, this is every time I say this, every time I see it, every time I even consider it, the average age of death for somebody who is homeless, for women is 43 and for men is 47, and that's not changing. And that's just stark and not acceptable, not acceptable. And we're doing lots of work in prevention across the system to try and affect that, but you know, that's the reality that we're working with. And people are dying with you know, sudden death and accidental death and drug use, but they're dying with organ failure, with cancer, with diseases related to drug use, with lung disease, with liver disease. So lots and lots of different conditions, most of them related to the social determinants of health. So if you consider the life lived and experience, then those are the things that are affecting why you die early. People, if you are homeless or if you're vulnerably housed, so this service isn't just for people who are rough sleeping, it's for anybody that's vulnerably housed, and working alongside as well migrant populations who have no recourse to public funds, which is a whole other session for another day. The people struggle with really simple day-to-day stuff. So if you have cancer, you get a cancer diagnosis. You or I will go to our GP, we'll see a specialist, we'll get an appointment, they'll phone us, we'll get a letter posted out to us, we've got our transport and we're going to get to that appointment and we can attend our follow-up appointments. That is not the case in these circumstances. So those, what we see as simple everyday processes aren't available to people who are homeless. So people die in hospital, or they die on the streets, or they die in really unsuitable beds out in the community or in hostels that really, really want to help, but don't have the services that sit and wrap around that to be able to support them. The staff who are supporting them struggle with knowing how to manage and with being able to access the services that are needed. And the services, when they are available, really struggle to know what to do and how to help. There's hospices themselves are a wonderful place. I've worked in hospices now since 1994. I've worked in hospices for a very, very long time. And I love and adore them, but they're in beautiful places, in parks, in leafy suburbs often, They're not directly accessible, and still within hospice care there is inequitable access. So the work that we've been doing at Birmingham St Mary's for the last 4, 5, 6 years now, and I can see Tina on the call, and she has been a really strong advocate of this work, is that we need to change our service in order to reach the people that need us, because if we don't make changes, then people can't access us. So that's the work that we've been involved in and what this is. Sharon mentioned bereavement impact, and a huge component of this service is about that bereavement impact. So often, actually, one of the predetermined reasons for people becoming homeless can be bereavement or loss that they've had in their childhood, that's led to that. And so not only are people dealing with the bereavement and losses of their past, they're dealing with the bereavement of their communities and families on the street around them and in their homes and in their communities, but also the people that are working in the service sectors that are supporting them are also feeling that bereavement. So we have built that into our service design. Okay, next slide, please. This is Ellie's slide, and I use it every time. This is somebody whose care we were involved with, and this is their last 1,000 days, and this is the information that was collected from 156 different communications and letters, and it details just some of the services that that this person was involved with. And so they were an adult, and ultimately they died. The scribble isn't my child's scribble. What it demonstrates is the mess of all of the services that somebody would be involved in, and actually also illustrates within this case that none of this was joined up. So I definitely see now the joy we have of working in Birmingham, where all of this is now joined up and networked, where we have things like lead worker peer mentor systems, we have no wrong door networks, we have ways of all speaking to each other to try and join this up for a person. The key bit that I've highlighted in bold is that this person presented at the Children's Hospice. And when Sharon before mentioned trust in services, they turned up at the Children's Hospital because they felt that they had been able to access with a level of trust children's services as a child. So it just demonstrates the difficulty that people are in and the need for us to be able to work together to make this better. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are we doing? We've been going for 3 months now. We started in September. We've been talking about it for a lot longer than that. And a lot of the talking was speaking to everybody that was working in and across the system. It was vitally, vitally important that we didn't just send out a hospice service, that we worked in and with everybody else that was doing this work. So it's across Birmingham and with tendrils into Solihull. So we're working into Solihull to support them. We've got national connections. So the service was designed with specialist leads in the UK. So Dr. Caroline Schulman and Neven Brophy, who have been doing this work for a number of years now, and also with involvement from colleagues in Canada, who have also been doing this work for 4 or 5 years now. It's multimodal. So we are delivering an education programme, and that's an education programme to anybody that's working in and within homelessness services, and that includes being able to pick up and recognise when somebody has palliative or end-of-life care needs, what to do about it, how to have personal conversations with someone about what they would want or need to give them back a level of choice, and some simple things like symptom management and how you could help to manage someone's pain. We have direct clinical practice, so we are now working in and within the MDTs within the system, and we're working in and within the health exchange. The health exchange, for those of you who don't know, is a primary care centre in the city centre, which is purely for people who are homeless, and an incredible team working from there who go above and beyond. And we had our first, thanks to Ellie, our first palliative care meeting there yesterday, which is just incredible. So we're doing caseload support. We've had our first referrals in the last couple of weeks. And when we talk about what that care looks like, it can be anything from supporting complex housing to sorting out symptoms, to providing some choice, to providing some counselling support, to providing some bereavement support. It's whatever that person needs when they need it. And we'll be developing some tailored bereavement support, which will include some bereavement training and developing peer support networks. So helping people that are in, who are homeless and are working within homelessness, how to look after each other, some key bereavement concepts. And hopefully we're talking to Cypher Fireside about supporting them with some memorialisation, so opportunities to remember people for who they are. And then the other aspect of the work is around networks and pathways, so about developing those partnerships and relationships. Thank you, David. So what do we want to do? Well, we want to increase the numbers of people that are recognised as having palliative and end-of-life care needs so that we can help them. So what happens is that there is this the prevention and rehabilitation, and we aim to get people living well and housed and in a job and doing well, and that's amazing. It's brilliant. We need to have all of those things, but then sometimes people die. And so being able to recognise when that could be happening, and to be able to get the choice and support services in there to enable that to happen. We want to ensure people, try and help people to die with dignity, to be able to maybe reconnect them with their families if that is what they want, and to just get some choice back when they don't have any. We want to improve the knowledge, skills and confidence of staff in dying, in care of the dying and in bereavement, and improve the experience of bereavement support. Thanks, Dave. Okay, so this is who we are. To thank you for your time. If you need to contact us, I think the email address was on the first slide. We have a service email address. And I'm just really grateful that everybody that's on here, there are people on here that have really helped us and supported us on this journey. I'm delighted we're up and going. And to all of those that have helped us along the way. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sharon. And I think we've got some time now to whether we wanted to ask some questions and just hear some comments. I know that Deirdre's put that joined up services genuinely save lives. And I actually think from that image of the web, you can see how messy it was for someone trying to get around different services. And I'll never forget a comment that was made to me when we was doing a health scrutiny report on homelessness, which was, you live by a diary, Sharon. I'm thinking about where I'm going to be sleeping tomorrow. I don't know about the 28th of September at 2 o'clock. I'm thinking about where I'm getting fed. So I think that's, you know, that's really important, and the joined up working. Sharon, I think that was a great presentation, and it'd be really good if you could just talk us through some of the differences that people face when they are from the homeless community when it comes to possibly bereavements in general.
So there's no access to service or very little access to service. You're not going to turn up for your cruise appointment, and you're not going to make that telephone bereavement call. The issues with bereavement are often trauma informed, and so the pain and hurt that people are feeling, and often the mental health conditions that they're living with, mean that bereavement is complex. And for people who are homeless and often not feeling their own value, when they are seeing people, for people that are alongside them, their communities and their families, when they're seeing people dying next to them, that for them starts to question what their own value is, and who's thinking of them, and who's there for them, and what's going to happen for them. So there are big complexities in there. But there's also just that normal human sense of loss. And and what that feels like for all of us. COVID times, aside from homelessness at the moment, we have real concerns about the long-term impact of bereavement across our city. And for people who are homeless, vulnerably housed, it's just worse. It's further compounded.
Brilliant, thank you. Thank you. You're getting a lot of positive comments for the determination and tenacity actually of working through this area and the work that your team's actually doing. One of the things I often say when it comes to homelessness is if you invest in crisis, often that's what you continue to get is crisis. If you invest in prevention, that is what you would generally get. Your model's very much talking about prevention. What would you like to see the ambition for this type of service if we had that magic wand, and whether that's in the city moving forward? I know we're in the early days, but what's the gold star ambition of what we need to invest in?
Oh, wow. I might call on Hannah and Ellie with this as well. If they're going to show their faces. For me, if we have someone who we know that there is a risk of them dying in the next year, I would want to know that if they need care, that care is obtainable within 24 hours, that there's a place for them to be able to be, where they feel safe, and that the people caring for them feel able to do that, that they feel secure, that we have the ability to sit with someone and allow them to make the choices that they want to make, to give them some control back for the end of their lives. So it's about place, it's about care, it's about recognising, it's about choice.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you very much.
Sharon, sorry. It's Ellie. Hi.
Hi, Ellie.
Hi. Sorry, I completely agree. And just, we've still got barriers, even at the hospice. We don't like people who drink and take drugs and swear and are a bit, out of our norm. So, for everyone to be accepting of different lifestyles.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the non-judgmental thing is a huge thing. Great stuff. So I've got Peter's got his hand up there waving. Sorry, Peter, I missed you initially. Do you want to ask your question? You're on mute.
Sorry, yes. It's an observation and a question in a way. I mean, Sharon Hudson would know. I've known her for quite a long time. I've been a GP in Wheeler Castle, and part of my training as a medical student, I had worked in a homeless centre down in London when I was training there. Also, as a GP, I've come across a lot of the cultural, shall I say, differences between those people who do become homeless. There is a saying that behind every homeless person there's a broken heart. And I think that's probably one of the most important things that I've kept in my mind. Not because I was able to mend that broken heart all the time, but on the other hand, by preventing the psychiatric, how shall I say, ladder, one actually can prevent the detachment that a person gets to become homeless. And the other thing is that some homeless people become homeless not because they've just suddenly lost a house, but they become disgruntled with society. They flip-flop into, they may have a house, but they may prefer to live rough because of the fact that they feel that they're just a number now. So obviously palliative care would be a very important thing to institute for those patients, or those people rather, sorry, who are homeless. But I think before we get to that palliative care state, I think maybe the psychiatric issues that are the background or the backbone maybe of homelessness maybe need to be addressed. I mean, I completely agree with what the two Sharons have said. I'm 100%. But I'm just wondering where, if you took the developmental angle of homelessness, is that something that maybe is something that needs to be addressed quite early on in the homelessness argument?
Okay, I'm gonna start the answer and then I'll hand over to Sharon. A lot of work's been done in the city around psychologically informed work around homelessness, and I'm going to give you a really technical answer, but there are two different types of factors that push anybody into crisis, and the more that you've got adding up against either side is the more likely something would happen. So you've got the kind of personal, which is you've been exposed to domestic abuse, or you've lost, you've come out of prison, them are personal circumstances, drug and alcohol. Then you've got the other side, which are more structural, which is no access to affordable good housing, education system that might have been broken, and that's where all your inequalities tend to add up, whether it's welfare reform. The more that someone has stacking up against them is the more likely they'll fall into some form of crisis, not necessarily homelessness or something else. Knowing now from a psychologically informed basis what I know about homelessness, I can confidently tell you that the first signal that my life would have fallen into crisis was at age 5. That's how far back it could be tracked. And if we actually put prevention into place and looked at those things, and that had nothing to do with a house. So a lot of that work has been done in the city, and that's why Birmingham's slightly unique in the fact that we never look at homelessness in it by itself. We look at homelessness and health. You cannot divide the two, otherwise it just simply it's a starting to fail because you're not looking in the right places, which falls in with what I think what you were saying, Peter. Sharon, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
I can add, I'm not an expert in homelessness, and which is why I am an expert in palliative care, and so it's why we need to work in and with the services who are, and I feel really grateful that we're working within that, within Birmingham, and we have quite unique and innovative ways that we're doing that. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Peter. We're somewhere down there, and hopefully one day we'll never be needed. But all that other stuff upstream needs sorting out first. Yeah.
So talking about links, Sharon, what kind of links is there with the hospitals? Because I think that's a question that Elizabeth asked.
Yeah, sure. Do you know, it's really tricky. We've got really, really good relationships with a lady called Jackie Connerty. And when we looked to design this service, Ellie went and spent time with her, and she's the homelessness pathways link nurse. So does an awful lot of work with, if somebody is in Heartlands, then they are referred to her, and she picks them up and she makes sure that she does everything she can to make sure they're safe and they come out. She's actually not at work at the moment, but there might be news hot off the press that that service could grow. I think. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, because it's very much needed. So that cycle of people bouncing in and out of hospital is one of the aims of our service that we want to address. We don't want to keep seeing that happening for people that have got complex ill health.
Brilliant. Thank you for that answer, Sharon. I get one more question, which is going to come from Clive, and then we're going to move on to hear from the peer mentors, because you're going to be absolutely amazed with the work that they are actually doing. And I think it's incredible. So Clive?
I may be speaking in advance of Hugh, but one of the things which has always struck me through my work in the Lieutenancy and the Queen's Order Volunteer Service is how many volunteer groups are working in areas which are not recognised by the general public as, well, they're uncomfortable with it, quite bluntly, and therefore they doesn't get the attraction, the views and the understanding that it should do. And I'm absolutely convinced this is one of those areas. And I'll just make one other comment, which is we really do need to make sure that those volunteer groups who are working in this incredibly important area get recognised. And one of the way they can be recognised is by applying for a Queen's Water Volunteer Service, where Nick Venning, who's on tonight, leads for the Lord Lieutenant. And it would be great if we could try to attract organisations working in this field to consider themselves, because all too often they don't realise just what a wonderful job they are doing. Thank you.
Great stuff. I mean, I think you're right. There's a lot of groups that work in this field. It's quite interesting. Some of them are preventing homelessness, particularly the feeds. There's a lot of people that use them. The food banks all contribute. The work in the hospitals, you know, the actual charities themselves, is a huge amount. We do bring them together probably about twice a year to recognise them and make sure that we're hearing from them so that they're a part of the plan of how we try to move forward, really. But absolutely, Clive, I totally take on board what you're saying about more formal recognition for the tireless work that they do. And I will actually feed that back to the Homeless Partnership Board about making sure that we encourage some of this stuff to take place, because a lot of people who volunteer, they don't want the recognition. They're too busy just doing the do. But actually, I think we are responsible for making sure that their efforts are actually noted.
Right, sorry, very, very quickly. If Nick or I can help in any way, shape or form to attend any of those meetings to explain it a bit more, we will be delighted. Thank you.
Clive, I love a meeting where there's an offer, and I'll be inboxing you my email address shortly. You don't have to ask me twice. And finally, Deirdre did ask a question about sofa surfers, hidden homelessness, and people that don't normally get to be seen. Sharon, have you got any views around that?
Yeah, I started this work from a referral for a young man 6-7 years ago now, and we had to meet in the car a lot of the time, or on the garden wall outside some mate's house, and but he was hidden, and so he never got access to the service or the care that he needed, and he never got the choices that he wanted, and he was always judged and was very difficult. And I think sometimes we just miss this, we miss it, and we focus our care and our services to very specific groups, or to people that are housed, or we, you know, obviously to people who are rough sleeping, but we don't always see that hidden homelessness, and we don't see that sofa surfing. And so part of this is that we really, really want to be alongside groups that are seeing that and addressing it, so that we can do more to help. And the no recourse to public funds, I think maybe another day, another time, but you know, people that are in our city with literally nothing, and with no access to healthcare and to health, or very, very limited access to healthcare and health services. There's a whole piece of work that needs to go into that too.
Brilliant, thank you. And Clive, just to say, one of the things that I always do, I tend to go and speak at a lot of corporate organisations, lots of different charitable places, and they always say to me, what can we do to help when it comes to homelessness? And my response always starts with, get your house in order first, because there are so many people who go to work every day and have no permanent home, who are sleeping in their cars or sleeping on someone's sofa. So my first starting point is make sure your organisation is one where people feel that they are comfortable to tell you that they're either homeless, or they are struggling financially, or they've got other things going on, so we can prevent them from being homeless in the first place. So that's always my starting point. So, well, thank you very much for those questions. And Sharon, thank you for being in the hot seat then. It was really heartwarming listening to all the fantastic work you're doing. I want to move on now actually to the peer mentors, because they do an absolutely fantastic job. And I'm going to hand over to Christine and Lee.
Hiya, thank you everyone. I'm feeling a bit nervous. I don't think I can top what Sharon Hudson's done. It's just so incredible. And having worked in the field of homelessness for so long and seeing so many people pass away without a good ending in a hospice, and a positive end, has been heartbreaking. So it's really good to see that something's being done about that. We do have a couple of slides, but we know we're on a very tight time limit because we are showing a video as well. So I will whiz through the first slide. If David, you could put that up for me. Is the first slide there, or I can just speak about if there's an issue with the slide? So I'll introduce myself. I'm Christine. I work for the Lead Worker Peer Mentor Service for its duration, 4.5 years as a lead worker. And I've got my colleague Lee with me today, who was a peer mentor. And in fact, a peer mentor who worked with me for a very long time. So the Lead Worker Peer Mentor Service was a work stream in a programme called Birmingham Changing Futures Together. And that programme was part of a larger national Fulfilling Lives programme, which is funded by the National Big Lottery Fund. And it was in 12 different areas, and it was to pilot new ways of working with individuals experiencing multiple and complex needs. So by multiple complex needs, we mean homelessness, mental health needs, substance misuse and offending, to name but a few, and working with individuals who are experiencing all of those things simultaneously. So the Lead Worker Peer Mentor Service supported individuals who had entrenched chaotic lifestyles, who were living on the margins of society, and had to have at least 3 out of those 4 needs for us to be able to support them. And a lead worker, which I was a lead worker, was someone who'd had an extensive professional history of working in support services, so knew them quite well and what the offer was out there. And a peer mentor is an individual who has themselves experienced multiple and complex needs in their life and have reached a place of stability and recovery, and want to give back to people who are still going through similar experiences. And together we provided a support package based on what the client wanted, what their needs and aspirations were. And that can be something seemingly quite small, such as getting on a methadone script and a bit of harm reduction for their substance misuse, or that could be something quite big as recovery, moving into housing and getting into employment. It was completely led by the individual. The support wasn't time limited, so we supported people for as long as they required that support. So some people we supported for a full 4 years, or for the whole duration of the project. And we never excluded anybody. So despite any barriers that presented, we always tried to work with that individual to proactively engage them rather than exclude them for behaviours that some other services might have excluded. So I'm going to hand over to Lee, just to explain a little bit more about the lead work and particularly the peer mentor role. Are you there, Lee?
Yeah, sorry, you'd have to bear with me a moment. For some reason, my screen has just shrunk. So did the slide come up eventually?
Yes, there's a slide on there, but I think we're on slide 3. If we could move it forward, David.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't, for some reason. It's gone really small into the corner now, the Zoom. I'm not.
That's okay. I trust you can ad-lib, Lee.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I'm Lee. As Christine said, I was originally employed over 4 years ago now for having lived experience. So I'd experienced mental health, addiction, offending, I'd been to prison, and homelessness. And I think a lot of the time that's kind of, you're looking at those main needs when we look at homelessness, and I think again, with mental health, I always say the chicken and the egg. So what comes first? Was somebody unwell and started to self-medicate, or did somebody become unwell through drug use? So yeah, that's just a little bit of my background. So like as Christine was saying, what we've done with our project is we noticed that people, like through what's been mentioned, through things like past trauma, didn't want to engage with services. They didn't trust them. They had bad experiences. So what we've done is we brought like a lead worker, as Christine said, which was a seasoned support worker and had worked in services previously, with the peer mentor that had lived experience. So the peer mentor would be able to know the process of filling in applications, because we know applications and referrals are sometimes complex, and again, that's something that will keep people out of services. We had like a simple way of documenting like progress or even shortfalls that clients had by using like an outcome star and like a simple assessment tool. And again, like I said, what we noticed is that people with complex needs wouldn't just have like, well, you know, I've got an addiction issue. It would be like, I've got an addiction issue, or I haven't got my benefits in place, but I haven't got any identification to open a bank account. So you'd find that they get bounced from pillar to post to sort out one thing. So what our project done is kind of went, well, okay, what's your issue today? And let's get that done. So let's get you a bank account. Let's get you some ID. You know, so a lot the main things that the peer mentor brought to that was that they could explain, having been through services, to people what to expect. Because like I said, people with mistrust, they go into service and they kind of think, well, I'm not going to get what I want anyway. So you'd be able to kind of keep them calm and get them into services. You know, a lot of identification about past things that you'd come through yourself, and even current things still going on. Because I think, you know, like I'm forever in recovery and things change. So I could share that stuff. Something else we really know that was really good is that obviously a professional come with like professional boundaries, and a peer mentor would be able to kind of speak and they'd be able to work out, like, to kind of explain that when people with multiple and complex needs kind of was aggressive, for example, that it didn't come from a place that was directed at them. It was from past traumas. Therefore, within our service, I know for a fact that nobody was ever expelled from service. We kind of would say, maybe, you know, we can give you like a warning type thing, but we would still work with everybody. They wouldn't be able to come to the office, for example, but we'd still do our outreach and go and work with them. So yeah, that's just a little bit of about what the lead worker and peer mentor project was. And I guess if you can see the slide, again, I think people could think, well, two people working together, you'd get more work done. But all the data that was collected, the main thing was that they'd say is that it was being able to like identify and talk to a peer mentor, and that's why they stuck around in the service, to allow the lead worker to be able to do their work.
Thanks, Lee. And if we've got the short animation to share, David, it sums up a lot of what we did.
Oh yeah, I got you back on big now.
Birmingham Changing Futures Together exists to create better support for people with multiple and complex needs through systems change. Now let's start with the Yellow Brick Road to Recovery. I'd like to tell you about the lead worker peer mentor service that ran in Birmingham for 4.5 years. We engaged with over 300 clients and saved over £3 million.
Imagine you find yourself suddenly homeless.
I have a feeling I'm not in Kansas anymore.
Wisdom has it that there's a safe place to sleep and look after your health.
But which is the way? Where do I go?
To the great and wonderful wizard himself for a simple housing needs assessment. Just head for the city centre.
But it's not that simple.
Depending on circumstances, we may not be able to offer accommodation directly. Help is contingent on arriving as early in the day as possible. Your housing needs assessment can take a very long time. Ensure you come prepared for a long wait, bring food and drink, and make childcare arrangements.
Imagine you had support, a lead worker to help navigate the maze of services.
Hi Dorothy, I'm here to advocate on your behalf and ensure you're supported. I can address barriers to assessment, I can reduce questions asked, and I can help you settle in. And not just me, how about some peer support who can relate to your predicament?
With lived experience of homelessness and mental ill health.
Problem drug and alcohol use.
A history of offending. We know how it is and what you're going through.
Together, we'll get you home, Dorothy.
The lead worker peer mentor model was set up to have a lead worker that had extensive knowledge of services existing, and the peer mentor was from lived experience. And the idea was to put two together and make a perfect, well, it was a perfect team.
I could help coordinate services and understand services, but I could never have that conversation with the client because I haven't been there, I haven't been on the streets, I haven't been in addiction, I haven't had to go through recovery services.
The peer mentors will have either experienced homelessness, mental health, offending and/or addiction.
I also had a process then of like children's homes, young offenders institutes, and ultimately prison for long term. Get involved in all sorts of things, you know, criminal offences, drugs, you know, that sort of stuff, stealing, shoplifting, breaking, flank entry and all that sort of stuff.
We've gone through the system. You know, I always say to people that the knowledge which I do have, you know, I've got a master's degrees in life.
When you're talking or helping somebody who has the same needs as you did, it's easier to understand where they're coming from.
Imagine you arrive at the hostel after a difficult journey, 105 beds all under one roof. Without support, could you go inside?
Come on, Toto. Let's go back to our doorway.
We've stayed here. I know it's scary, but it's just a step on the road.
Glinda helped us. Now we've all got our own places.
Let's go in together. Are you all right, love?
There is a women's hostel you might find more comfortable.
No, thank you, I've got this.
So there's one direct access hostel that if you're in dire need and you need a bed for the night, there's one place that you can go, one. Whereas before, I'd say there's at least 15, and that happened overnight.
So the barriers to services, for example, sending somebody an appointment who hasn't got an address, who's a rough sleeper, who misses appointments, but had a temporary address, for example.
So it's just layer upon layer of barriers and almost discrimination, I would say, against people who are rough sleeping on the streets.
I've been trying now for 2 weeks to just get someone to pick the phone up on behalf of someone I'm advocating for. If I was in chaos, I wouldn't have the inclination to hang on the phone for a half an hour. So someone's starting out on the journey now, I have real empathy for, because it's a total nightmare.
Say someone comes out of prison and they need to maybe get themselves back on a methadone prescription, or their mental health needs looking at. But they've got to be here and they've got to be there and in two places at the same time. On the day of release, you have just 4 to 5 hours to navigate a dizzying checklist of tasks all over the city. To do probation assessment, drug treatment assessment, accommodation assessment, library benefits online, mental health appointments, shopping for food. One wrong step, one missed probation appointment, and it's a breach. Back to square one. Missed accommodation assessment. Do not pass go. The staff have gone. Everything points to a night sleeping rough. But with the right support.
Done, 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 done. There's no need to sit in a queue for a housing assessment. We found supported housing, we brought you food parcels, and there's bedding in this rucksack. We'll get your prescription on the way to probation and then take you to your new gap. Get you settled in. Oh, and here's a day saver.
I was scripted methadone and got just a day's dose on release. Without Glinda booking me in at drug services, I'd have fallen straight off my script.
I would have been ordered to probation office anywhere in the city, depending on the address they had on record at the start of my sentence. Glinda made me aware of my right to request the one closest to me.
For other commissioners, I think they need to look at the immense amount of money that we're able to save, but secondary, the lives we were able to save and the lives we were able to improve. 5 years ago, there was a top 10 list of the most notorious offenders or nuisances. The top 10 that were on that list 4 years ago are not there today because they are all housed. Majority of them are living in their own accommodation. They're either in recovery or they are comfortably scripted.
So without that support, I think the death rates for people with multiple and complex needs are so significantly higher than the average population. So we're starting to see the repercussions of that service disappearing, and we are hoping to promote then what we have learned so other services are encouraged to embrace that model.
Listen to the people who've been there. If you listen to us, it's bleeding obvious what needs to be done, because we are experts on how you can spend your money wisely and it is a win-win situation.
So what's different about our service was the fact that we had peer mentors, paid member of staff with lived experience that had been where our clients had been. They were able to talk to them on their level and engage them far better than staff without lived experience. What we found from speaking to the clients was that that's what kept them engaged throughout the service, sometimes for over 4 years. Another thing that the client said was that they really had a deep distrust and sometimes fear of those services, and being able to speak to people that had gone through what they had been through and come out the other end enabled them to have that trust and start attending those services where they hadn't done for years. We also had lead workers that looked at the client's care package holistically, not just as individual issues that had to be dealt with separately. They looked at that person as a human, not only in all of their issues, but all their assets as well, to make sure that they could also do the things that they enjoyed doing. A unique thing that our programme has was that we didn't have a particular time frame that the clients had to work to. So there was no 16 weeks to make sure they were cured of their drug addiction. We were a 4.5-year programme, and they were happy to stay on that programme for as long as it took. The timescales were made with the client. One of the unique things about our service was that we never expelled any of our clients. Numerous clients came and went, they disengaged and they came back at a time and a place that was better for them. We never expelled anybody. Some services, if you miss 2 or 3 appointments, you'll be expelled, meaning that some of the clients will slide back down that snake on the snake and ladders board and go right back to square one. None of our clients had that pressure on them. Over the 4 years, the Lead Worker Peer Mentor Service created overall savings of £3.2 million. Reduced criminal convictions leading to savings of £2.1 million. Reduced mental health inpatient episodes leading to savings of £484,000. Reduced evictions leading to savings of £411,000. Reduced hospital attendances leading to savings of £402,000. If you've liked what you've seen and are interested in knowing more about the Lead Worker Peer Mentor Service, then please contact Birmingham Changing Futures Together.
And I think it's over to discussion now, unless there's anything else you wanted to say, Lee.
No, I think the video explained it well.
It does. I think everyone will agree how powerful that video really was. And from my perspective, I've spent a day, I think it's called a day on the front line. I can't remember if that was the term used.
Yeah.
But I spent a day out with Changing Futures and went around with one of the peer mentors. And although we talk about Changing Futures, it's not, this program as literally revolutionised the way we think about homelessness across the city, if I'm being 100% honest. It's changed people's futures as individuals, but it's pushed us in a direction where we've looked at systemic change within the system and started to build more services around needs rather than expecting everyone to fit in with our 9 to 5. So I think that's been really important. And even for me, as a cabinet member, my language changed. So I never talk about people with lived experiences anymore. I always say experts by experience, because that is exactly what they are, and that's the value that should be put on it. So Lee, salute you. Brilliant, fantastic, absolutely powerful. So you're getting all around applause. This is awesome. So let me just move the screen to see if I can see any hands up in the air. Peter?
Super. Clearly, excellent set of services we've heard about. But I'd also like to bring back from these the lessons in the question you raised, Sharon. And my own background was like Peter Bartolo. I was also a medic in a night shelter, St Chad's first till we burnt it down, and then the Trinity night shelter later on. But the word you've used a few times, Sharon, has been prevention. And I suppose the question I'm really asking is, how do we learn from these projects where we can actually prevent people falling into these situations? And my present role is as lead governor of the Community Healthcare Trust. So I'm really asking is, you mentioned the age 5, should we already be doing something within the early years service, within the Community Trust, and onwards with schools on the Government 5 Ways in trying to identify people at risk, learning what the risk factors are, some of them, as we know, very acute, like losing your home or your job, but identifying the people that are most at risk of falling into this very, very difficult pathway.
Absolutely is my answer. Even in the council now, when we look at homelessness, we're starting off from children's services, and that's not necessarily people who are already homeless. I think the whole thing around the prevention is, the difficulty with it is that when you're preventing something, you never see it happen in the future. So it's hard to kind of say, this is exactly what we've prevented. But ultimately, for me, it's about preventing someone from falling into crisis. And that can take all different shapes and forms. So yes, we need to be looking at prevention from early out, from when people are children, from, you know, when they're at work. And it is, in order to really embed prevention, we have to deal with systemic change in policies and in organisations and in the way that we think about how we support people moving forward. So absolutely. Lee, I don't know if you've got any views on what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I guess look, what we're saying. So I think, you know, we're talking about multiple and complex needs here, but I think with anything that you kind of want to achieve success, for me, it's a no-brainer to utilise people that have actually been there themselves, no matter what you're doing. So I mean, I wouldn't say that, you know, potentially people tried to reach me at school, and like yourself, if I look back to like 5, 6, I knew things weren't going to go well for me. I misbehaved, you know, I'd done crazy things. And I guess teachers did try to reach me, but because they didn't have that lived experience, I'm not willing to engage. That's what the lived experience does. It drops barriers. It allows a piece of work to be done in like less than half the time to get someone to engage and get to the crux of their issues. So I would love to see peer mentors in school, people that had been expelled from school or, you know, had difficult, traumatic family lives, to kind of spot these children and, like you say, prevent them spending 20 years in multiple and complex needs, becoming homeless, drug addicts with mental health issues.
Yeah, totally agree, Lee. I always say to people that Jean Templeton, the chief executive of St Basil's, she loves me. If she knew me when I was 16, she'd be running from me even now. So, you know, it's even when you're in that space, it's about helping people to get from A to B when they don't necessarily see. Because I'll tell you now, looking back, I can realise where I was a bit troublesome. When I was in the midst of it, I thought it was everyone else, and I was just cracking on because it was what I knew and how I lived. So I think it's quite easy. So I think you're spot on, Lee, and I think you do an awesome job anyway.
Well,
Tina?
I think Sharon, you have that, don't you, with like so trauma, and don't forget adolescence and being a teenager. You're lost anyway. So that's like a double whammy, isn't it? So where do you go then?
Absolutely. And even later on, you still get triggered every now and then. So it's about understanding your triggers and you know, as an expert by experience, you can see a slight behaviour and you just get it straight away. So Tina, I think you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello everyone, and thank you so much for those presentations. Lee, I could listen to you forever. That was just so well put. It switched lights on, and also Sharon and the St Mary's team. So proud to see all this coming to fruition. Well done, because it took a lot of jumping through many hoops. So what I was going to ask, because you know, when you talk about systemic change, I was really captured by what you said about invest in crisis and you keep getting crisis, invest in prevention. Now, the thing about investing in prevention, the big thing with the system is that so many within the system want to be able to measure short-term change. And we're talking about lifetime impact here. And I run a grant-making trust, and we are really keen to invest in prevention and turn our strategy on its head. Yes, we need some reactive stuff, but this is about proactivity. And It's about how to influence the influencers to move away from only measuring success by short steps and really taking the risk in investing, because some of those people that we help at the age of 5, you don't know whether they're being rescued, for want of a better word, from a cycle of distress, or whether, you know, you don't know who would be affected. So systemic change is helping everybody in the system as well, isn't it? But you don't necessarily know until a generation on whether things have changed. So how can we influence funders and decision makers to get off the short-term measures of success?
I think one of the things is that we sometimes we get very hierarchical in some of this stuff. And actually, you know, I'm the cabinet member for homelessness. I'm responsible for this strategy across the city. But Lee's voice is more powerful than mine when it comes to this. And I can strip away the ego and absolutely say that. So it's about creating platforms where we are bringing the right people together that can actually demonstrate and show people what the changes are. There's experts by experience that come with me to do presentations and all kinds of stuff. And it's also about creating allies in that space. I'm like a rag to a bone, I don't stop talking about systemic change. And after a while, people started saying it back to me. So I knew that it starts to catch on. And we have to do that at all different levels and encourage experts by experience to be placed at all different levels. And because that is really how we get that change coming through. You know, some people thought we were crazed when we were talked about going into this prevention space, when we had so many people on the streets. And going through prevention and dealing with a crisis is very brave. And at points, the government didn't understand why we was doing it. They thought we was off the chain, and they wouldn't leave Birmingham alone. They were constantly on our cases because they thought we were looking in the wrong place. But now we've been held up as an exemplar for doing that. So it's about bringing people on side and actually being brave and bold and having the evidence base, because Lee is part of the narrative around the evidence base and telling that story. I think that would be my answer to that, Tina.
Thank you.
I don't know if Christine, if you've got anything to add to that.
No, I completely agree. And part of what Birmingham Changing Futures Together set out to do was to create systems change, but was to do that also through having lived experience at every level of a service. So right at the top of the strategic level, and commissioners right back down to front facing, like client facing staff. And that was always our aim. And I completely agree with you, Sharon, that unless you hear it from someone who's been through it, you're not going to identify all those little barriers. You're not going to know what isn't working. It's only someone who's been through that whole system who's going to be able to say to you, no, that didn't work for me. That doesn't work, and that doesn't work. And it's going to see the bigger picture of the person's journey.
Absolutely. Thank you, Christine. We're going to go to one more question, and that's going to be with Stella. And Deirdre, I keep seeing this yellow hand, and I don't know whether you're clapping or whether your hand's up to ask a question. So I apologise. Oh, it's clapping. That's fine. I'm feeling terrible. I thought I was going to get in trouble with the chairperson. So Stella Sims, I think you've got a question on the phones.
I didn't actually have one. In fact, I think that it was a residual hands up from about an hour ago, but that was not relating to what has been said, which has been so incredibly powerful tonight. I've never had experience of these things in the way that you've been describing, but I have had experience of it from a totally different point of view. I won't go into all that now, but I'm concerned to know how many people you deal with who don't have the multitude of issues that we've been talking about and we've been listening to, which are obviously incredibly important. But how many people have just sort of dropped into homelessness from an acute situation that they could never have predicted, because that must be something that happens certainly at the moment in the difficult times that we live in.
Totally. I actually met someone who was a rough sleeper who actually probably at one point was close to probably a millionaire, and actually it was due to marriage breaking down and various things taking place. So it's so unpredictable, and we say most people are almost, you know, you can be a wage away from homelessness, and I think it's about not putting those stereotypes on it. It can happen to anybody, and it's not necessarily always about the home. That can be a symptom of other issues going on. So it's quite complex, and there's a whole range there.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking. But the thing that I am thinking is that the amount of expertise that you're all displaying in this great city of ours that seems to like to get to the nub of a problem, not just look at the surface of these issues. It seems to me that this is a great place to be able to analyse all these different aspects and to include everyone. Not always the obvious, but some of the people who you just wouldn't imagine would have these difficulties, and therefore need perhaps even more specialised help.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that's why we've got such a strong partnership board. I first walked into the room and I nearly fell over. There was over 30 people in the room, and you're only allowed on the partnership board if you're a doer and you're going to contribute something. It's not a talking shop. We all have to, we have our asks and we have our offers, and that's how we work. But I think one of the points I think I made earlier was the thing around, if we invest in crisis, you always get crisis, and if you invest in prevention, that's what we get. And I think that's why this is the great point to hand over to actually Helen, just to talk about why it's important to donate to places and fundraise for the hospice.
Oh, thank you, Sharon. That was an incredibly insightful evening. And I've worked for the hospice for 7-8 months now, and it's been a real privilege to be working with the hospice over that time. I think starting in April, in the middle of everything kicking off with COVID, and watching services adapt and respond to kind of make sure that we're still delivering hospice care for all and working towards that mission has been so humbling while I've been sat working from home and everything. So I'm the partnerships manager for the hospice. So I work in the fundraising team on the charity side of things. And my role really involves working with individuals and with businesses who want to make that transformational impact with the hospice. So less of a transactional thing, and really get involved with what we do, really understand what we do, and support us through kind of charitable donations, or maybe some pro bono work, and share their skills to really help us improve our services. And as Sharon was saying earlier in her presentation, as a hospice, we have very little NHS funding, so it's about 33%, which, you know, hopefully tonight you've seen that actually the work that we do doesn't deserve to be 33% funded, and the rest, the 67% coming from, you know, the very generous donations of the public. And so, but actually as a charity, that is what we rely on to keep these things running. And as a charity, our mission is hospice care for all. So we have our hospice based in Selly Park, but actually most of our care takes place out in the community. I think somebody was saying earlier about how hospices can be quite hard to access those who kind of need our care, because they are in the suburbs, they are a bit leafy. So, you know, Sharon's doing some incredible work with the Homeless Project and also beyond as well. So we've worked with care homes, and we've got teams who work in schools, and we've got all of our bereavement support as well. And we make sure that we're supporting family members and carers too. So there's a whole breadth of what we do. So we have got a Just Giving page, which I'll post the link in the chat now for you, which is for, oh, thank you, Deirdre, on it. And if you would like to make a donation towards the charity's work, support us over Christmas, then that would be so appreciated. It really does, do amazing things at the hospice. And obviously, you know, like any charity, it's been a pretty rough year with events having to be cancelled, and social distancing, meaning, you know, cake bakes can't really be a thing anymore. So we really are looking for individuals to be generous, to support our work and keep these services running at the end of the day. And I think that tonight's presentations and talks have shown that it is absolutely essential that they keep running. So if you'd like to pay a donation, then please just click on the Just Giving link. And if you want to kind of have a chat with me about maybe how your business or how you as an individual could support the hospice, then I'm sure my email address can get circulated afterwards as well. And I'd love to chat to anybody, or you can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter too. So yeah, I'd be very much for having a virtual coffee. But thank you so much for your support and for inviting the hospice along today. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, Helen. I think it's been wonderful hearing about all the great work that happens at the hospice. I think sometimes people don't realise the breadth of work that you actually do. And I know that there was a question in the chat from Mark that said, is the video something that we can share amongst our friends? Absolutely. That's one of the key things about evenings like tonight, is that we all get tooled up with new knowledge and we share it with our friends and family, and the videos and the tools that we get from that. So please do make sure that you share that which is on YouTube. Now, in the midst of working around homelessness and working with homeless people, everyone has a variation of what their needs are. And some people will tell us that what they really want is they want us to help them to feel like they're boosting their confidence. And some people will say they want us to help them get them a job. Some people tell us they want us to help them to get a hobby, and they just want to do the normal everyday things that we all get to do when we've settled in our lives. And we have to make sure that we promote and we support that. And for some people, not me, singing is one of them. So there's a number of things that people could do. And one of the touching groups that I actually got to witnessing, I think it was almost in concert actually, a couple of years ago, was actually the choir with no name, which I'm going to hand over to Sharon so she could talk a little bit more and introduce what we're about to see now, and you will be absolutely amazed at how wonderful these guys are.
So this is the choir with no name, and we've got our own choir with no name in Birmingham. There are another 3 across the country, in Liverpool, in Brighton and in London. And as Sharon said, this is about people coming together, doing something they love. You'll feel the joy from this. And they're going to sing for us. This is me, and I'm not going to say any more.
And another one, just for luck.
I'm not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say, 'cause we don't want your broken parts.
I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say, 'cause no one will love you as you are.
But I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious.
When the sharpest words wanna cut me down, I'm gonna send a flood, gonna drown them out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be.
Look out, 'cause here I come, and I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen, I make no apology. This is me.
Another round of bullets hits my skin. Well, far away, 'cause today I won't let the shame sink in.
We are bursting through the barricades, reaching for the sun. We are warriors. Yeah, that's what we've become. That's what we've become. Won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us. For we are warriors. When the sharpest words wanna cut me down, and send the flood gonna drown me out. I 1. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's it.
So, yeah.
Sorry, Sharon. Can I just say that if you are interested in more of that, the Choir with No Name are doing a Christmas sing-along on the 15th of December. And if you just if you Google Choir with No Name, pay £5 for a ticket, contribute to the work that they're doing, and have a bit of a Christmas sing-along as well, then go for it.
Fantastic. I always struggle to chair meetings when this group actually end it with singing, because they always leave me feeling quite incredibly emotional, and actually I recognise some of the faces, so I find it quite, it always touches me and it throws me off track, so thanks, Sharon. But you know, I hope this evening has been informative. I hope that you've kind of learned something new, or you know, you've come away with something. It's a hugely important issue, homelessness, for this city and this country. It's sad that in 2020 that we have so many people who are facing homelessness across the country, and it's probably a sad indictment on all of us as a society. But there is always that saying that I am my brother's keeper, and whilst we still have most vulnerable in the homelessness space, we are not nowhere near where we should be, and have very little to celebrate, considering some of our neighbours are going through what they are. So it's really important that we support homelessness, but also to challenge our thinking about what homelessness is and how we should support people who are homeless. I hope that the biggest thing that takes away is experts by experience. And if you're a part of an organisation, that you do reach out to organisations like Change into Actions. That's our funding. That's our alternative giving scheme in the city for homelessness. But changing faces, because actually that's how we as a council have really looked at how do we challenge our own pathways, which then challenges our own policies. Please always make sure your organisation is one that you do feel that, you know, people can be honest and come forward and disclose if they need to, if they're struggling and falling into difficulty. And again, for me, it's been heartwarming just to say thank you to everyone who's contributed, whether it's as a Lunar Society person or actually a presenter. And let's just keep the conversation going, really. It's really, really important. I think it's been an amazing evening, so thank you very much. And I'm going to hand back over to the real chair, Deirdre.
Thank you so much, Sharon. I was hoping you'd speak for a little while longer so I could run and get the tissue. That was incredibly emotional, the entire evening from beginning to end. And we must really thank our incredible panel. Sharon Hudson, thank you for the insight into St. Mary's Hospice. Christine and Lee, certainly your expert experience is something that I think we can all go away from knowing that. On this call, we've had somebody who has that lived experience and has told us exactly what is happening. You know, homelessness can definitely happen to anyone, and I was really grateful that through this conversation, we spoke about the different levels of homelessness, and that it can be it's no respecter of class, color, creed, or financial aspects in your life. And one of the wonderful things that the Lunar Society does is that we actually, and we've seen this tonight, is that sometimes we engage in social impacting that you actually can't measure. And I actually have to thank Professor Paul Cadman, whom we have on the call tonight, who invited myself and some other individuals who are on the call, Tina Swanee and Sharon Thompson amongst them, to be a part of the Art for Charity initiative to help and engage in raising money for St. Mary's Hospice. And that's been an incredible initiative. And Paul Cadman, I've heard being described as a quiet change maker. And I almost feel like tonight we've had that thread, because I am certain that people are going to go away from tonight making changes. And we actually heard that on the call through the engagement between Clive and Sharon tonight in itself. And that is actually one of the amazing things about the Lunar Society, is that we've seen us live in that mission. We've seen us stimulating some very incredible ideas. We've had such a fantastic discussion, and we have catalyzed the action. So we are definitely closer together than we are apart in any way, shape or form. And I'd certainly encourage you all to donate to Birmingham St. Mary's Hospice. And I would like to invite you all to actually unmute and give our incredible panel an old-fashioned round of applause. So with that all being said, thank you so much to all of you for being on the call from wherever in the world you were. Thank you for being on the call tonight, and bless you all. Have an amazing Christmas. And I am certainly looking forward to seeing you in the new year. And I've said this before on calls, I can't guarantee that when I see you in person, I will not hug you. So hopefully COVID permitted or vaccine permitted, whichever comes first. I will certainly be hugging. So have a wonderful, wonderful evening. And thank you again so much for your incredible participation. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Bye.
That was excellent.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.